I'm Mark Gagan, and you're listening to the Voice of Insurance podcast, produced in association with Advantage Go, enabling enterprise-scale underwriting through a single pane of glass. This week's guest has probably the best 360-degree understanding of the insurance value chain of anyone I've had on the show. This is because Mike Keating has a career that spans collecting insurance premiums in person and runs all the way through underwriting, backing MGAs, working for and founding MGAs, to working for private equity and helping find investment to start new insurance businesses. Now Mike is putting all he has learned into running the Managing General Agents Association, the MGAA, which is the trade body that represents the MGA community in the UK and Ireland. The MGAA's members write about £15 billion, or just under $20 billion in income. So this is an organisation that carries quite a lot of weight in the market. In this podcast, we examine the reasons behind the continued success of the MGA as a vehicle for delivering underwriting talent, and the prospects for growth to continue sustainably into the future. We also learn what's on the MGAA's agenda, in terms of the lobbying work it does, as well as the latest initiatives from the important educational and networking sides of the organisation. But leaning on Mike's broad experience, our topic ranges are far wider than that. For example, a large part of our discussion extends to include the application of AI in the MGA space. With the average tenure of the underwriting paper backing MGAs hitting new highs, MGAs providing the preferred career path for many underwriters, and with someone as passionate and knowledgeable as Mike looking out for its interests, the future for the UK and Ireland MGA sector looks very healthy. But most importantly, Mike is great company and an insurance player through and through. And the best possible reason to listen to this podcast is to get the benefit of some of the insights that his long experience has given him. Enjoy the podcast. Mike, welcome to the Voice of Insurance.
Great to be here.
Anyone who doesn't know you, why don't you give us a bit of a brief rundown of your career to date and how you got to be running the MGAA?
Right, so first and foremost, I will need to concertina that. Otherwise,
We've got plenty of time.
We'll take up the whole thing.
It's...
So by luck and judgment, I've been fortunate in my career insofar that I've seen probably both sides of all fences. So to the point that when in my early career, I actually became a old-fashioned prudential agent who was dealing direct with the end customer. So,
wow, so was this life insurance then?
Well, this was the time when there was really no regulation and you had things such as you could sell whole life, industrial branch and general insurance. So all in the same things.
So it was life and non-life?
Yeah, absolutely. Although
anything you could sell, basically.
Yeah, but the money was in the life, as you can imagine from that.
So
bit.
Did you come every week and collect the premiums?
Correct, yeah. Once a week collections, and then do your back calls on a Monday for those people who weren't there on a Saturday.
But did you do the pools as well?
But a great grounding in terms of dealing with end customers from that bit. Quick, fast run through. I came into the city, worked at the Prudential, who then pulled out of general insurance.
Yeah, because I remember that time. That was early 90s.
Correct.
Prudential, they were a big player in the company market.
Very big.
Well, unsurprisingly, it's a very big company.
Very big. And the interesting bit is that when they went into runoff, they made probably more money during the runoff than they did in the decision they took to actually exit out of the market. But, that's history. And then through a number of different roles, I spent some time broking. So, again, I enjoyed the broking side from that bit. Then I joined AXA just at the turn of 1999, 2000. I had a great time at AXA for sort of nearly 12 years, culminating in that I ran their non-direct personal lines business, but also had responsibility for deploying capital for MGAs. And that was probably the start point of the MGA world in terms of deploying capital.
And what sort of MGAs? Was it personal lines?
Well, personal lines, but I had account responsibility for Towergate at the time. So a good friend of mine, Mr. Peter Cullum, who was changing the dynamics across the industry, which everybody's listened to this.
Interesting conversations over the years.
Yeah, very interesting. But again, I learned an awful lot from Peter in terms of working with him or trading with him, as was at that time, as you would say. And then I left AXA and then went into the MGA world. And that included some time at a non-standard home MGA, which again was interesting for looking at what is non-standard. And that can be both occupation as well as businesses in flood zones and thatched properties. And then I moved to a very large MGA, which is still running, was primary, but is now bespoke. And that, again, as you do through any sort of long career, you learn from people you work with, colleagues, people you sort of report to. And then before this role, I worked with an organisation called Westcliff Capital, who are a small PE firm. alongside some colleagues who were creating a new MGA startup called Claims with a Q, who does loss recovery. They are currently a member, which is fantastic. They are thriving and providing a real niche product to brokers and their customers. But for me in that particular time, what I hadn't done throughout that quick speed dial through my career, I'd never seen how you can raise money and how money was raised in terms of new startups. So I really enjoyed seeing the intricacies of how Westkill Capital put together a sort of a fundraising funds for that piece. So that was great. And then more or less coinciding with the time I had at Claims in terms of working to obtain capital, insurance capital for the MGA sort of side and setting up the IT piece, the opportunity to become CEO at the MGAA came up. And I'd actually been a board member of the MGAA when I represented one of our largest MGAs. And the rest now is history, and I've been here 4.5 years. So if I take a step back and look at the sort of the landscape, I've had the opportunity to see all different parts of the market. I've been in a position, more important, I believe, for our members, that I've been in a position where I've deployed capital, but actually also been on the other side when I've been the recipient of capital. And I think that holds me in quite good stead when I'm talking to our valued supplier members, our valued insurer members, and no doubt our MGA members as well.
Well, Mike, I'm really glad we went through all that, because I don't think I've met anyone who's probably been all the way from actually collecting cash off a policyholder, all the way up to dealing with capital markets and raising a PE fund.
Yeah.
Fascinating. You probably know the insurance value chain better than anybody I've ever spoken to.
Yeah.
I mean, you haven't run a reinsurer, have you?
No, I haven't done that, to be fair, but we were a Lloyd's cover holder as well. So at the time when I was part of an MGA, so I enjoyed that piece. So again, but people can't see me on this sort of particular podcast, but when I started, I was 6'5" and had black hair. And as you can see now, I'm 5'7" or whatever, and sort of a grey fox. So there you go. It does take its toll. And
also, for anyone listening who doesn't know the MGA, I mean, in terms of trade bodies, it's relatively new. Now, are we coming up for a 10-year anniversary?
Over that.
We're over 10 already. You can see time flies.
Yeah, 2011, sort of it.
Yes, so already over. Tell anyone who's listening what the ethos and why did it come into being and what's it really standing for?
Well, if you go back to the genesis of when it sort of started, and we've still got representatives on our board who were there right at the start, and Reg Brown has to take great credit for sort of pulling together that, you know, you had these MGAs sort of starting up and there was a need to...
We're going to have to build a very big statue of Reg Brown at some point.
You know, we could get a community together. And effectively, if I'm right, and I probably should know the history, but Reg would certainly know the history, still being as sharp as a tack. I think they kept it under wraps until they had commitment, I think, of somewhere between 30 or 40 members. And then they broke cover and said, we are now an MGA.
And so it's serving a need that there's no one really representing the MGA community, the cover holding community.
Not at that time. So fast forward to where we are now. We are the only trade association representing the interest of the MGA sector, both in the UK and Ireland, because I took the association into Ireland 2 years ago, and that was through some market research. We're pleased around what we're doing in Ireland from our member perspective, and we get good feedback from our members. So we are there absolutely relentlessly and forensically to serve our members. And we have 3 tiers of membership, which obviously are MGAs. The key thing to say to anyone listening to this is that to be an MGA member, your fiduciary duty has to be to your capital. We do not accept brokers with binders. They have a place in the market, quite rightly. But our view is that a broker with a binder...
They've got their own trade bodies.
Correct. But a broker with a binder, we believe that the fiduciary duty is to the end customer as opposed to the underwriting capital.
And I suppose there are brokers that have a big Chinese wall running down the middle of them with genuine MGAs that are absolutely 100% independent. Brokers there to get you more cover and make you pay less for it, whereas an MGA is the agent of the insurer and in an ideal world would sell you less cover for more money.
I wouldn't necessarily
in an ideal world, they'll sell you the right cover at the fair price.
Correct. And all in the interest of the end customer. So that's a very important distinction for us. And the due diligence we do on all new members makes the case around, are you a broker with a binder or are you an MGA? We then have an insurer membership tier, market practitioners, which something when I joined 4.5 years ago, I really invested in, because it goes without saying that MGAs cannot operate or exist unless they have capital. So as a trade association, it's very important that we have a broad church of capital with a risk appetite which meets the growing number of our members. And then we have a fantastic supplier membership tier, which includes members who provide products and services to both MGAs as well as insurers, as well as some other suppliers. And they provide a fantastic range of those products and services which meet the needs. So it's a very, very vibrant community. If we move on in terms of strategically, what are we trying to achieve? Being a not-for-profit trade association.
Yeah, what's your core day job? What was the real fundamental reason you put together the problem you were here to solve?
Sorry to interrupt Mike and Mark's MGA conversation, but the Insurance Network thought you might like to hear about our Delegated Authority Strategy Day taking place on April the 29th in London.
Supported by the MGAA and bringing together the entire DA ecosystem, including syndicates, MGAs, cover holders, insurers and brokers of all sizes, this one-day event explores new opportunities and overcoming key challenges to drive your DA strategy forward.
Whether it's bordereau processing, data management, new technology, or attracting tomorrow's talent, you'll leave with actionable insights and new strategies to navigate the changing DA landscape.
Search The Insurance Network to find out more.
That's the Insurance Network.
So when I'm asked this question, I always like to put it into three pillars, really. The first one really is around networking and events. So we as an association have an obligation to ensure that across all of our membership tiers that we provide an opportunity for them to network, interact, talk around the sector, basically trade with each other on the same basis within that community. And we put on a wide range of events during our financial year, culminating in our annual conference where last year we had over 1,200 delegates, and something we're extremely proud of if you think that an MGA is putting together a one-day conference which attracts 1,200 delegates.
Well, certainly it's been a fixture for the last 7 or 8 years for me. I always come if I'm in the country.
Great, that's fantastic. So that's a very, very important element, and we have done successfully some more intimate type events for members. So we've had insurers who've asked us to create a round table where they can test some products, test some of their strategy with some of our MGA members, all under sort of like a lunch or a breakfast in terms of a confidentiality. So that's a very, very important part of what we do. The second pillar, something which we're extremely proud of and something, again, we will relentlessly invest in, is what we call our program of learning and insights. So as a trade association, we have an absolute commitment and obligation to ensure that we are providing professional support, both around upskilling, education on the sector, helping people wherever they are in their particular part of their career to continue to flourish and be the best they possibly can with the tools as an association we can provide in those learning objectives. And just give you some example things which I've introduced in my tenure. So we have a technical underwriting insight. We have a technical claims insight. So if I paused on those two, as you've alluded to, MGAs rely on third-party capital. You have to be underwriting experts to want to deliver sustainable and long-term underwriting profits. So we get some of our insurer members who will put on masterclasses around risk management, rating impacts, composition of ULRs, how you can manage sort of rate through to the end result in terms of how that works, peril consumption, which we do a technical claims insight. So we get great support in terms of these webinars and these programs which we put together from our members, and we get people who have maybe been in the industry for a week or actually been a CEO or CEO for 20 years. And again, that's something we get fantastic feedback. And that's just two examples in terms of that educational pillar.
Is that informal education rather? Obviously, there's the Chartered Institute of Insurance, the CII, where you can go and get letters after your name. Is yours more informal, more kind of on the job?
They qualify for CPD points. Yeah,
absolutely. And is that issued by the CII?
Yeah, we have an audit by the CII every year. We had a great accreditation in 2024, which followed on from 2023.
So it's a bit like you can be a chartered broker,
Correct.
for example,
Correct.
and a chartered insurer. You're a sort of chartered trade body in that sense, or an accredited trade body recognised by the
Correct.
CII.
Correct. And we have to ensure, quite rightly, because we will never be complacent under my tenure, we have to ensure that the quality of what we put on through our market briefings or our technical insights or whatever, that there's clear objectives as to who the attendees and what they can expect to take away and learn from that. And we are absolutely forensic and relentless in ensuring that we do.
And spreading best practice, that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
You've got model contracts, those kind of things.
Yeah, all of that thing.
Yeah.
So that whole central pillar, alongside sitting complementary with the networking and the events thing, is so important for what we do. And just to add, on top of the technical claims and technical underwriting, we've introduced operational insight, which no doubt we'll touch upon around technology and AI, because that's very important. We have a compliance insight, which and I know you're smiling, you can see how popular that is in terms of attending. We have one for personal lines. We have a connect to Lloyd's. We've got half of our MGA members are Lloyd's cover holders from that bit. So these are all webinar and seminars. But the key thing, what we've done as an association, is that we've looked to ensure that the content of these are member driven. So it's not a case of us saying, well, this is what we think you want. We know they want the actual headlines of the insights, but what do they want to hear? So the first one, which I'd give credit to Zurich, actually the first technical underwriting insight, is that we asked them to put a masterclass on what sort of presentation they would like to see for MGAs if they were seeking capacity.
Right.
And so that was the start of a 10, and it wasn't personal or commercial bias, but they just walked through and said, whether it was you were looking for a Zurich capital or not, this is the sort of presentation and content you should be including.
Otherwise, you're not going to get far.
Absolutely.
What about lobbying? There are lobbying organisations sitting around the London market. Obviously, we've got the LMG.
That was the third pillar. That's pillar 3. So as a not-for-profit trade association, a very good point, we are there to be the collective voice for all our members. We have excellent relationships with Matt Brewers and his team at the FCA. It wouldn't work here because it's a podcast. I could show you a montage of our connectivity with all the necessary groups, peer associations. I've got a fantastic relationship with Graham at Bieber, obviously Christopher Cross at Lieber, Hannah at the ABI. So we all look to collaborate together. We are individual associations.
Because you each have an individual reason to exist.
Correct.
right.
Absolutely.
Lieber's different from Bieber because Lieber's the London international brokers and global wholesale brokers are pretty different from a lot of Bieber's members, and fairly understandable. They've got their own agenda.
Yeah.
So MGAs have their own agenda. Obviously, ABIs, lots of large insurers, and obviously including all the life insurers and pension providers as well. And obviously Lloyd's looks after itself.
Correct.
And we've got the IUA
Yeah.
for the whole London international company market as well. So,
yeah.
And I'm bound to have missed one as well. That's the other thing. And the CII looking after trade qualifications.
But the key thing by having these collaborative and excellent relationships, and you'd be aware that we've had agreed a memo of understanding with Hannah at the ABI. We became the first affiliate with Graham at Bieber. Is the fact that quite rightly, when we individually engage with Matt and his team at the regulator, he knows that if we can come together on key issues and we are a voice together, so that gives me a much stronger voice. If you're all telling me this doesn't seem right or it's not proportionate in terms of what we're trying to achieve, and I've got the ABI, the MGAA and Bieber and whatever.
Yeah, because when a regulator starts talking about intermediaries, they can catch everybody, can't they? Whereas they might not mean your type of intermediary as opposed to another type.
No. So that's very, very important. But as you've very well articulated, we all have our own specific membership group, and that's quite distinct to what we're trying to do for those members, and that's one of the reasons why we exist.
Probably was something in the ether about maybe 8 or 9 years ago of the MGA maybe pursuing its own royal charter. Would that be now not on the agenda?
No, it's not. That was before my time. And
the CII has a royal charter, and it's really to give those qualifications the kind of weight that they require, I think, isn't that? That's the main reason to have it. So in which case, if you're already accredited to the CII, there's not much reason to have one.
No, there's not actually. And one of the things which, again, it sounds boring in terms of but when I joined 4 years ago, the first thing I did straight out of the blocks was to commission some quite comprehensive research on the membership. What it gave me was a great benchmark of where the association was in terms of what it was doing well, what it wasn't doing so well from that bit. And we built on that for the first 2 years. And then 18 months ago, I then went again and commissioned another set of research, which then compared to the original research, because that allows us to have real confidence that where we're deploying both resource and using members' money, it's in line with what our members are saying is important to them. And that is so important to me because I would never want to diverge and say, this is a nice Mike Keating pet project here, when actually the members are saying, well, actually, we'd rather you be doing this over here. And so that's something we're planning to do the same sort of, it's another 2 years.
It's always valuable.
Yeah.
If you can start monitoring the response to the same set of questions,
Yeah.
and you can always add and subtract bits, but you have that core, and over time it starts to become a useful series, a bit like the original London Matters report was a long time ago, and it's nice to be able to track it, and obviously some of the stats that the IUA have been doing over the years as well. The real value is where you can start plotting it over time, and you can see where you're making progress and where you need to work.
Yeah, and if members, which we always get a great response rate, if members are prepared to invest the time into completing the survey for their trade association, then it's quite right that they should then see their commitment results in actions in terms of what we do. And the other thing is that if we get a small response to a particular thing we maybe start doing, and we get asked at any of our events why you're not doing that, we can quite openly say, well, look, there wasn't a lot of support across the members from that piece, but we'll keep that in background. So very, very important that we have that connection. It's not every trade association should have it, but very much that their actions, their investment, the voice is always linked to what their members want. And that's what we need to do.
Yes, actually, what about a quick summary of where we are with the membership? How many members, and if you've got any rough idea of GWP that they control, that kind of thing? How many employees have they got?
So in total, we have probably close now to 450 members across all three tiers combined. We're close to over 230 MGA members. They underwrite in excess of 15 billion of premium income.
Pound sterling.
So that shows you the size of the sector from that bit.
Yep.
There are half of those are Lloyd's cover holders. They also provide cover under 300 different product lines. So being in the industry that length of time, I've always challenged, are there really over 300 product lines? But there are. So we continue to improve our MI and data. The other thing I'm really pleased of is that I think the tenure of a relationship between MGA and its capital continues to extend. So you could look at maybe 4 or 5 years ago, the average might be 2 years, 2.5 years. That's now in excess of 3 years and growing. So I think that's great, both for the broker community in terms of having security in capital, and also lends itself that these relationships between capital and MGAs are far more on a stronger footing, which a majority of that will be delivered on the fact that the underwriting results are, if not at minimum satisfactory, but actually probably in the good road.
That's really interesting you're talking about that, because it does seem to be fundamentally the tenure has got longer, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Might have been all hand to mouth, even 12 months to 12 months before. You'd renew your paper every year, and now we see many more multi-year deals. Part of that has been this phenomenon of the kind of hybrid carrier, which is quite interesting, something that's grown a lot in the last 4 or 5 years particularly. I'd say it's more of a US phenomenon, but at the same time, it's certainly coming over here.
Correct.
I mean, you must be aware of it. I'm sure we've got members who are following that kind of strategy. What do you think's going on there? I think the first off would have been a reaction to the last hard market where we had a bit of a shakeout. It's natural and healthy to have shakeouts in all hard markets, and all markets harden. They've hardened for particularly a good reason, because the results haven't been good enough. And then all trading relationships, and a company that was in a line may exit a line, and that may also involve them exiting some cover holder relationships that they've got. I would see that created that demand for some of the better underwriters to say, well, actually, if we're going to commit, now that you know that I'm one of the good guys, we're going to commit for much longer periods, because I don't want to have a business that is in jeopardy just because the market's hardened and my paper providers have changed their mind on something, have got cold feet, and I want that tenure. Is it sort of a reaction to the shakeout that we had 4 or 5 years ago?
I think there's a number of things at play here. One of the things I think the MGA sector should be particularly proud of, and I would say certainly all of our members, is that when I speak to our insurer members, we have over 60 of those, they say to me that the underwriting expertise, professionalism, knowledge within MGAs now is at its highest it has ever been. Now, part of that is frankly because there's been an exodus from some insurers put on great training programs moving into the MGA sector, because those individuals feel that they can add or create more value in an MGA than perhaps they can in a large insurer. And insurers recognise that there's a slight talent drain from that bit. So as a start point, you have an underwriting-led community like MGAs are, who are basically engendering confidence that they know what they're doing in terms of whatever product class they're operating in. They are completely switched on to the need for excellent management information, both on pricing, reserving, risk selection from that bit. And effectively, again, MGAs don't have legacy systems, so they will quickly have one version of the truth on that MI. Often they will have far better MI than the capital who are providing them support anyway. So if you take that as a start point and say, well, hold on, there's a whole sector here which have got fantastic underwriting expertise, predominantly in niche areas which are difficult at times to underwrite and navigate. And then you look at capital to say, how can we diversify without necessarily investing in our own? And then you go to that market and think, crikey, these people really know what they're doing and talk about. Let's lend them our balance sheet and get them to do that for us, recognising that they know more about that market than we do, and looking at the financial model and looking at how that business performs. Of course, we want to be in there for 3 or 5 years, because we recognise that in any market, be it open market business, whatever, you will get your bumps in the road. So that's the start point from there. And again, coming to your observation around the hybrid carriers, that is led again by organisations such as Bridgehaven. They came to the market with a solely MGA-based model. They have a great reinsurance approach to the individual portfolios of MGAs. They have innovative financial engineering. They have A-rated paper. So they're very, very attractive, and they can see that there's pockets in UK and Ireland where they are confident will provide them with consistent positive underwriting earnings.
And they can give that commitment. They can say, well, you've got the paper. The paper's going to stick around because it's us. Yeah. It's us, and we've got reinsurance out the back. But we'll maintain that relationship in a stable way.
You're right, Mike. But to be fair, none of us are naive in this. Every contract will have a termination clause in it one way or the other. I think one of the things which, again, I think something Lloyd's, and we're working with Lloyd's in this, probably need to consider a little bit more seriously is around the tenure of cancellation periods. So my view is that a minimum really should be 180 days. There are still some, especially in Lloyd's, which are 90 days.
It doesn't give you long,
does
it?
No, exactly. And again, to be fair, we're working with our Lloyd's colleagues, etc., in terms of how we can try and improve that. But fundamentally, you've got to look at it from a consumer duty perspective even, because if you've got 90 days and you're given we're out in 90 days termination, the time to actually pull together your presentation, go to market, agree a new deal, onboard that deal, because onboarding, quite rightly, takes some time, and that some organisations are better on onboarding than others, and you're trying to do that in 90 days, it's impossible. So again, I've gone slightly off piece there, but
I get that.
But it's very, very important. But again, I'll come back to the genesis of my point that it's so encouraging to see that the tenure is growing, and that is a testament to capital's confidence in the underwriting performance and the underwriters in the MGA, and also the MGA's executive and team's confidence in the longevity of that capital. Because just finally on this point, Mark, is that in my experience, what happens now is that MGAs do as much due diligence on their capital as capital do on MGAs. And again, you and I have been in the business long enough when that was more one way than the other, I would say.
Absolutely. So this is one of my pet theories about the rise of MGAs and the continued rise of MGAs throughout the cycle. Hard or soft doesn't seem to make much difference. The way that this, and the way you alluded to who is providing the better home for underwriting talent at the moment. One of my pet theories is that technology is really helping.
Yeah.
In the early 90s, perhaps we were both wandering up and down Fenchurch Street with slipcases in our arms or whatever. Yeah. Adding an MGA was almost a certain way of adding more bureaucracy, another potential series of errors, or at least another 3 months before you found out, or 6 months more likely, before you found out what was really happening, or, am I on this or am I not on this? I don't know. I'll ask my MGA whether they're on it. I can ask them and say they don't think they're on it, but they might be on it. And we'll find out when the claim comes through. These days, go to any of your conferences, you've got these amazing service providers.
Yeah.
So it's almost anyone who's started an MGA in the last 5 years has got no real excuse. You've got the best technology available to you. Everything's pretty much real time. So all your paper providers can see exactly what you've underwritten today, or what you just underwrote 4 minutes ago, or what's on your screen now if you really want them to see that much. They can drill right down into it. What's the geocoding? What type of roof has it got? Or, what's it built out of? how's it going to affect their aggregates as an insurer and how it's going to affect their reinsurance renewal and all the other things. An underwriter, as always, even if you're in the balance sheet carrier, you still need the finance department to support you.
Correct.
Just because you're all working for the same company. Of course, it's still the CFO needs to support you.
Yeah.
Finance needs to be happy with what you're doing and see what you're doing. Now we seem to have sort of disaggregated that to say, well, it doesn't matter where I'm sitting. The CFO, the money person, can now see. It doesn't really matter whether they're sitting in the office on the second floor of my same building or whether they're in the second floor of a building a few doors down the road working at a different company. So in the end, my underwriting added value is measured in the same way, and I can now own that underwriting added value.
And your point is valid. But, if you look at, as we said, at the start of our conversation, you've got fiduciary duties to capital.
Yeah.
So these MGAs are virtual insurers when you look at them and you go into any MGA, and the optics and feel, the mood music is all around being an insurer. But their advantages, and again, these are advantages to capital, is the fact, as you've highlighted, is that their technology will be state of the art. They will have one version of the truth in terms of their data and their underwriting performance. They'll be able to cut and slice that in a way which, to be fair, and it's not a criticism of insurers, it's just the fact that they have a growing sandwich of legacy systems and it's trying to extract that. And of course, that's very attractive to sort of insurers because you can get that real visibility on performance management, portfolio management, spot areas which may need some tidying up, for want of a better phrase, but at the same time spot through the data opportunities where premium may be left on the table. And this is where MGAs, through their agility, innovation, systems, insight, this is why they have that competitive advantage. And why, if you as a capital provider, why wouldn't you, in terms of your comment around new entrants, why would you not want to tap into that without having to invest internally with all that product development?
And of course, there are just those natural places. Any innovative class is a natural place for an MGA to thrive because you need to aggregate lots of capital. No one wants to do it necessarily 100% because it's scary.
Yeah.
It might be scary, or it's so niche. Again, is there really enough income? And there's certainly not enough income for me to employ my own underwriters to do this. But if I offer you 10% or 15% of this, I support you 10 to 15%. I don't have to do anything. You're investing in that underwriter. You're investing in that expertise, and you can work it out. And you'll ride that new niche class that might be tomorrow's cyber, or might be the cyber of 20 years' time. But until it becomes cyber at some point, it's going to be quite small and niche. But it's a great diversifier for me.
But it's speed to market as well.
Yeah.
So speed to market. So in my own company insurance experience, with the best will in the world and with the best speed of thought and collaboration, you could still say it might take over a year for an insurer to bring a new product to market.
Yeah.
It won't take an MGA that time to do that. They can say to any capital provider, if this is an area which you've got no profile in, but you want to go into, A, I've got the underwriting expertise, B, I've already got the product, C, I can build that product on my system far quicker than you can, provide you with the MI and confidence that you'll get the necessary data, then again, why wouldn't you as a capital provider say, please go ahead?
Absolutely. There's always that two-way side, of course. With a smart capital provider, it's probably providing paper to lots of different MGAs doing similar things in different geographies, for example.
Correct.
So sometimes if they're a really good capital provider, they can, of course, spread their own expertise and knowledge. So, what I've learned over here is something. It can be a two-way thing as well as just a one-way thing. So would you say, given all we've just said, would probably MGAs are going to continue to increase their share of the insurance value chain?
Yeah, you could say, I would say this given my current role, but my view is that MGAs are now part of the fabric of broker placing strategies. They're not an outlier. And that's come through a number of MGA performance, not least during COVID and then post-COVID, in terms of being very, very steady in terms of providing a level of service and underwriting expertise. Brokers clearly see MGAs as equals alongside a lot of the big insurer names. Some see MGAs as being perhaps above those in terms of quality of service, access to decision maker or whatever. But if it's underpinned, and you touched on it, if it's underpinned that MGAs are providing, where their expertise predominantly lies in specialist and niche sort of areas, then they sit very much alongside the panel of partners which brokers use. And if I look at the Insurance Times survey last year, which again, we work with Insurance Times. If I looked at a survey, I just spoke to one of our members, he did with his broker panel, there is no bubble to be burst here. And my only caution on that bubble to be burst is the fact that MGAs going into now effectively I hate the word softening, but let's call it a reducing rate adequacy market. It's important they retain that muscle memory, that their operation costs are flexible, that they can absorb a reduction potentially in their retained earnings because premiums are going to reduce. In the past, when an MGA tried to grow in a soft market, which was always going to be to the detriment to his capital, a lot of that was driven because they had a fixed cost base which they needed to meet. And the only way they could do that was pull a new business lever. And there's only one way that's going to go wrong. And that's the fact is that your loss ratio is going to go wrong. That, unfortunately, that's the case.
Yes.
But I don't see behaviours like that anymore. MGAs are very experienced in navigating their way through a reducing rate adequacy market, and they'll work with their capital to do it.
The thing is, it's a competitive market. Once that combined ratio, however it's composed, once it's over 100, not to say the game's up, but if it's consistently over 100 and you can't tell a story about how it's going to sustainably be below 95, then the CFO does want to have a word with
Correct.
you. And the clock is now ticking.
But the story is, why is it over 100?
Yes, exactly.
Is it a cat event? Is it a weather event? And if you strip that out, then actually the underlying performance of the portfolio is actually stable. But that's where the data comes into it. And that's where the MGAs have got that level of data, which is so important.
And everyone's coming to those conclusions much quicker.
Yeah, agree.
It would have taken you 2 or 3 years to work it all out.
Agreed.
In the early 90s.
Yeah.
And now you can see it happen. You can see the trend. You can start to worry about it a lot quicker within a few quarters. Whereas back then it would have taken you a long time to work it all out, and it would have much more inertia. Now everyone can see. So I suppose ultimately, if you're not adding value and you're effectively extracting value because your cost basis, you're adding an extra cost that doesn't need to be there, then ultimately competition will mean that it won't be there.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right.
What other things are top of your agenda? And if you're out there lobbying, what things are you asking for? We've got a UK government that's a bit more pliant and certainly saying nice things about wanting the financial services sector to grow, to be an engine of growth of the UK. As they know that it's one of the things that the UK does pretty well. They want to encourage it. What would you be asking for them when you're sitting down with the FCA, for example, saying?
I think, again, we're fortunate insofar that we have these regular dialogue with Matt and his team on areas which are impacting our members. And a few of these, as I alluded to earlier, are actually very similar to some of our peer associations. So if you take things, 2 examples, if you look at things like consumer duty and fair value, okay? Yeah. Now, for fair value, there was a cottage industry created on that, probably bigger than a cottage industry. And at the end of that, there was one product actually withdrawn from the market. I might be corrected, but my knowledge was that there wasn't one. And so I think proportionate regulation, I think, is right. I think the ability for us and our peer associations to highlight to the regulator where the regulation is actually an inhibitor and it's not really adding any value in terms of what's happening, as I was called, on the coalface of how the business ecosystem is working. And I think, to be fair to sort of the FCA, I think they recognise that both fair value and consumer duty, which I fully support the consumer duty, that they may have looked to introduce that in a different way, okay? Because to be fair, there's been no shortage of feedback from us and our members and BIBA and whatever in terms of some of the challenges from that. So I think there's always the conversation around proportionate. Is it proportionate? What is the outcome you're trying to achieve? Because sometimes there's a sense that as an industry, we don't all get up in the morning with an objective to try and, excuse my French, screw over the end customer. That is not our objective. I think the last claim stats I saw, markets claim stats, was some of the region of 96% of all claims are actually paid by the market. So we are doing lots of things right. We do have the end customer in place. But if you look at MGAs in particular who deal through the broker community, brokers have professional indemnity, what they should have, right, in place. They're dealing with a client. They're providing professional advice to that client. So this is around when we look at proportionate regulation and say, is there a real proper understanding of that? The protections, which certainly commercial businesses are getting through that chain,
Exactly.
Is regulation proportionate to those protections? Now, I recognise, and I think this is a route which is certainly being explored by the regulator, I recognise there are different dynamics around consumer business. So if you think there's two buckets here, consumer business and the vulnerable customers.
If that MGA is selling directly to the public, it's very different from if they're selling to a business through a broker.
Exactly. And I think you wouldn't like the words that you want sort of double-sided regulation, but I think there needs to be a recognition of
that one is very different from the other.
Thank you. Yeah, exactly that.
Sophisticated buyers and
Correct.
Sophisticated sellers.
One size doesn't fit all, Mark, on this. One size doesn't fit all, I don't think.
And do you think that now we've changed the regulatory duty to a certain extent that they have to bear in mind the effect on competitiveness and other things? Is that starting to feed through into the way that they engage with it?
I think it's very, very sort of small green shoots and it's a good point you raised, because if you look at fair value and consumer duty, undoubtedly brokers that basically curtailed innovation and introduction of new products because they looked at it and said, this is such a high hurdle. And also, and again, Graham at Bieber shared this with me, brokers withdrew products from the market because if they've got 30 different personalised home policies and you've got to do 30 different returns, they're saying that from a cost perspective, it just wasn't economical. So in a way, whilst the intention of that regulation was absolutely right, because everybody wants the right outcomes and we are purchasers of insurance ourselves, so we want the right outcomes. What it did do was actually suppress innovation, potential choice.
Not good for competition.
Yeah, because it was just operation. You have a small broker who's doing some small commercial and personal lines and might have a team of 12 people in a high street, which is going so well, and all of a sudden they have to do this level of returns across all their product range. Then basically someone's going to say, well, economically this isn't right.
Yeah, you've just got to watch out for the perverse outcomes that can happen.
But I'm encouraged by the transparent, collaborative dialogue we as an association have with the FCA, and I really like the fact that they're very clear and clarity on their feedback, and they're always there ready to listen and actually try and understand. Won't always do anything about it, which is fair enough, and they'll have their reasons, but the collaboration, I think they should certainly be recognised for.
We all want good regulation because occasionally as journalists we pick up on some of the outer reaches of the very poorly regulated. They're not a great representative of our industry. And when you see it, we all know when we see it, and we all know that we do not want those people in our industry.
Correct.
Because they're ruining everything for everyone else.
Yeah.
And terrible outcomes for our own customers.
Yeah, some tragic outcomes.
Exactly. AI, we couldn't be sitting in 2025 and not talk about AI.
Yeah.
Have you got a view on it? Is there something, are you working on anything for the members, codes of practice, how to implement it? How not to implement it?
I think, as I alluded to, we've had a number of masterclasses around AI. I wouldn't say it's in its infancy. I think a lot of the conferences I've been to, participated, listened to what I would call the real experts. I think some of the key messages coming out are it's complementary to human interaction. Okay, I think that's an important thing, and I haven't heard anyone say anything different to that. So it's not going to replace FTE or individuals, and that's been a consistent message, number one. Number two, a very, very important point actually was shared at our conference last year, actually, is that you must do your homework first in terms of planning as what you want to achieve and get by using AI, as opposed to, for want of a better phrase, write a check and then try and work it out after. And I think that was very, very good advice, because there's a danger that people do it as an arms race and go straight in and get it. I need to have it because everyone's got AI, and then don't know how to use it, what they're trying to get out of it. So I think that planning, that understanding is very, very important. We have some of our members who have been early adopters of AI. So one is using AI in terms of triaging new business inquiries.
Yeah.
So that particular software, AI, a broker can upload an inquiry in any format he requires. So that removes that thinking process of how can I get it to the MGA? And then the AI is effectively extracting what is the risk profile required to assess and price that particular risk. And the CEO shared with me that underwriter productivity had increased by 40% in doing that.
So that was a very good return on investment.
Correct.
Yes, it certainly seems to be that. My canvassing of everybody I've spoken to on this podcast in the last 18 months has been there are many more of those sorts of stories. Certainly, it's going to free up the underwriters to be more productive, and they're going to be happier as well, and they're going to be focusing on the things that are really more likely to be in our appetite, risks that we can quote on, we think we're actually going to win them.
Yeah.
And we can get them back really quickly to the broker, and speed's of the essence. So all these things are going to be really, really helpful. And who wouldn't want an indefatigable a system that never makes any mistakes, or hopefully rarely makes mistakes, reading all my wordings and comparing this policy wording with that policy wording, or reading an inspection report.
Correct.
And there's so many great applications. You think, well, none of them are going to take anyone's jobs away. They're just going to make everyone's jobs more focused on good value added stuff.
Yeah, I think the other area, Mark, just on that theme, which I think doesn't get enough airtime, is how it is and will continue to transform the claims process.
Yes.
So we, as you just said, there's a lot of promotion at that front end and underwriting, whatever, but it is existing and operating pretty well on the claim side. Again, allowing, and this was touched on at a claims conference we sort of hosted a couple of weeks ago, is touched upon about how the AI is allowing human interaction with the claimant, perhaps taking some of the stress out of that particular incident or claims management, because it allows a more of a human interaction to try and help the claimant get back to where they need to get to. And I think sometimes the impact on the claims ecosystem is probably not as highlighted as strongly as it is in terms of the underwriting side.
Absolutely. The glamour's always on the money side, on the money coming in rather than the money going out. It always has been.
That's very good analogy. Yeah,
absolutely.
Great phrase, glamour. That's what glamour.
You know, if you can trim a few points of your loss ratio because you are handling those claims so much better.
Yeah.
And you're triaging the claims that are coming in and saying, well, which one should I deal with first? Because if I deal with this quickly, this is going to have a better outcome, and which is going to cost us less money.
Yeah, cycle
time.
It'll
be better for the customer as well.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
Way better. Whereas that one can probably wait till tomorrow morning because that's fairly static. But this one is, if I act now, I can really help.
Yeah, but I think it's very important as an industry that we don't rush headlong into AI adoption in terms of replacing the human interaction, because there is a danger. You know, I saw a survey at a conference where people talking about chatbots, you know, in terms of people see that as a way of AI getting to the right person quickly. And someone said about 75% of those surveyed said they'd rather spend some time waiting to. Well, there you go. but that just shows you one of the frustrations, that we are in a relationship business with our customers and whatever.
Yes, what you want is for that AI to be doing all the stuff in the background, so that actually frees up that expensive employee time to actually talk to the customer.
Absolutely right.
The reason why you have to phone them is because there are 73 things on the FAQ. And none of the ones that are the actual problem that you've got to solve. That's why you're phoning them, you know, because you know it's one of the things not on the 73 normal things that are going wrong. That's why I'm calling. Because otherwise, I could just press 3 buttons and it'll be fine.
Yeah.
I think I've come to the end of my list of questions. So is there anything you've got to add, Mike? Thanks so much for spending time with
I've
me.
really enjoyed it. We've covered a lot of topics, you know, which has been great fun. And you know,
it looks like the membership's going to keep growing, and you're going to be, next time I come talk to you, it won't be 15, it'll be 50.
Yeah, again, I'd probably end on that. I've been asked previously, you know, what's your target for members? And as an association, we would want MGAs, insurers and suppliers, we would hope that our proposition and what we do for the sector, we would hope that they would want to be a member of the association because of what we do and the membership benefits we provide. And they would see that, well, of course we're a member because we're part of the MGA sector, as opposed to necessarily go out farming and hunting for new members. We do approach anyone we see is starting up to come and join us. But I think that's always myself and my team. His sort of objective is ensure that.
And I suppose the nature of the beast is there's always new MGAs being formed every day. They've always got potential new members. One last thing before we sign off is, what about internationally? A lot of your members are writing a lot of international business, not just UK and Ireland. In the States, obviously, we've got the WSIA. Do you think there might be a space for a more international kind of flavour, another supranational body perhaps?
I think, again, great question, and this gives me an opportunity to share that. I do chair an informal quarterly committee, which includes my peers from WISA, Brady Kelly, from Target Markets, from the Underwriting Agencies Council in Australia, and from Canada.
And is it something in continental Europe or not?
Well, you've got the MGAA in Holland, which has got about 128, 130 members. Some of those are brokers with binders. I think, and I mean this more affectionately, I think some of the other territories in Europe are still slightly unsophisticated
absolutely. For example, I did a podcast down in Madrid for Dual's 25th anniversary, and that's a business I've known very well probably since it was formed. I've known some of the people there for a long time. And the interesting thing is, 25 years ago, there was no such thing as an MGA.
Yeah.
So there wasn't really the relevant section of the insurance law and the insurance code to regulate it, and so it could be challenged. So are you a broker? There were tied agents. You go to any village in Spain or any town in Spain, there's a tied agents. There's the Generali one, there's a Mapfre one, and the Zurich one, and an Allianz one as you drive through any town. But there weren't necessarily MGAs underwriting on behalf of a series of underwriters. And so actually, but Dual being well placed, we're able to actually get the law clarified and obviously never look back, because actually Dual Iberia was the first part of the Dual business. But so, that probably shows that the MGA culture in some countries in continental Europe is not quite taken hold in the same way, but it will probably come.
Well, on that theme, I think it's the second week in June is the inaugural European MGA conference, which has got, I think, Dual are speaking. There's a few of our members speaking as well. So I think I'm proposing hopefully to attend that myself. So that'll be quite an interesting about who's there.
Because certainly you can see it's picking up, and I see in my feed, obviously I follow the Spanish market a lot. I've started to see lots of specialists out, cyber MGAs and things I've never heard of, and you think, well, this is really good. It's very vibrant, lots of entrepreneurial young underwriters getting together and putting together interesting propositions. So I think it's one of these things that maybe it's taken longer, but you can see the future. It's going to be there, it's going to come, and it's going to keep growing. Yeah,
it'll be very interesting, the outputs of that conference.
We'll have to come up with some international MGA, the IMGAA.
That's something like that on that basis,
Or give it a French name, just to make them happy. The AMGII or something good. Mike, thank you so much for your time. I've really enjoyed chatting.
I really enjoyed it, Mark. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you.
All the best. Cheers.
Well, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, don't forget to subscribe or leave a like or a review or recommendation on whatever podcast platform you used to access this programme. These really help get the word out. Before we go, just a quick reminder that advertising slots are available here and in other places in the Voice of Insurance podcasts. Podcasting is the fastest growing medium and attracts a high quality audience of key decision makers. It's also an intimate medium where you, the listener, are right in the room with me and the interview subjects. Needless to say, that means it's a great way of getting your message out directly to an audience because you know you've got their full attention. It's also very cost effective. So get in touch with Mark at thevoiceofinsurance.com to find out how you could be speaking directly to the industry. The Voice of Insurance podcast is produced in association with Advantage Go, enabling enterprise-scale underwriting through a single pane of glass. Voice of Insurance is produced by me, Mark Gagan. Music was written by Anna Gagan and produced by Carlos Gagan. Check out more podcasts and written comment pieces at www.thevoiceofinsurance.com.